I'm Rob Dansman, and this is The Better Semester, where I provide insight and actionable advice to parents of college students. I'm a nationally certified counselor and licensed clinical mental health counselor. All right. Joel, it's so good to see you, man. Today I've got Joel Ingersoll. He is going to be talking to me about college students and college student mental health and some of the exciting stuff that he has coming up and some of the tools that he uses. So without further ado, Joel, welcome to the podcast today.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with some of your background. I'd love for you to explain a little bit about who you are, what you do, and where you came from. So maybe you could kind of tell the origin story a little bit in terms of, how you got into what you do.
Yeah, terrific. So I'm a psychologist. I have a PhD in clinical psychology. Did a master's degree in applied social psychology, which was a super cool program and experience. And then I am also a certified master coach. And I wound up in this world of private practice, which I've been doing for over 20 years now. It was a really interesting kind of experience. I started working in the mental health field back in like 1991 while I was in college as a mental health nursing assistant. And I was super excited about it. And I did that work for 4 years in a private psychiatric hospital. So I kind of got introed into the clinical world back in the early 90s. And at that point, finished my undergrad in psychology, started grad school, and was really interested in pursuing an academic career. So finished a master's degree, did some research in the social psych area, and then in between trying to get into a doctoral program, I had worked in a couple of drug and alcohol rehabs as a counselor. I found my way really interested in the addictions world and continued to pursue research in that area while in grad school and in the doctoral program. And then I was all set to do a 2-year postdoc in addictions after I finished my PhD. But then this really cool job opportunity came along at Lehigh University, and it was for a staff psychologist, coordinator of alcohol and other drugs position. And it was really interesting because I had never done any training on college campuses. So I had worked in rehabs, in prisons, in medical facilities, in vet hospitals. And so I thought, well, let me apply. And when I interviewed there, my my eventual boss was a sports psychologist. And I'd grown up an athlete playing sports, worked with some pro athletes at that point. But it really felt like a great experience. And that was back in 2002. And then I worked in higher education as a psychologist for a period of 12 years at 3 different universities. So that's how I like landed in that world.
Oh yeah, and I think we need a whole other episode to talk about like career tracks. And I think we
Yeah.
talked before about how we both had this very non-linear kind of way of finding what we do. Um, uh, what do you think was like most surprising, or what did you see most when you were at Lehigh? And I'm going to assume that a lot of people listening probably don't know where Lehigh University is. They may have never heard of it. Maybe you could share a little bit about like where that is. Um,
Sure. So Lehigh is located in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Um, and it's right outside of New Jersey. And it's other schools kind of connected in that area. From an athletic perspective, they're in the Patriot League conference, which when I got to Lehigh, I never really knew how amazing and pure this conference was athletically. So your Bucknell universities and your Lafayette's and Colgates of the world, it was really just an amazing eye opener to this really pure student athlete type of environment. Plus, it's like got an outstanding reputation for engineering and historically. So it's a really cool place to work.
Don't they also have one of the top business schools, don't they?
They,
Like one of
they
the top business
do.
programs.
Yes, and they're quite innovative in how they integrated business and engineering, which they had done almost 20 years, well, probably 20 years ago. So they were way ahead of it. And what I thought was so cool, and it caught me off guard because I thought, okay, I'm going to go and work in this counseling center and just see students for a one-on-one individual therapy. And I was all game for that. But what I had no idea about is when you work as a staff psychologist or a staff therapist on a college campus, you are going to wear multiple hats. So immediately I was working with athletic teams. I was the sports psychologist for the women's basketball team there for 5 years. I traveled with them. I'd go to practices. I would do outreach programs. I was the advisor for a sorority, and which was an experience in and of itself and quite an education. Outreach programs. I taught in grad school, so it was unbelievable because I got to do so many, really unique things.
Right. How did how did you develop or well, yeah, what did it look like to develop specific skills around college students? Because as you and I both know, e- every age, manifests anxiety, depression, psychological issues like very differently. Prison population is different than college, and little kiddos in kindergarten are different than college. So I wonder, like, what did the interventions look like, and what kind of challenges were students bringing to you?
I think initially I was caught off guard, and because and and quite transparently, sorry, um, there's no way I could have gained admission to Lehigh out of high school. So when I landed on that campus as an employee, I thought initially, well, how hard can this be? Like I went from working in a correctional facility to this, you know, setting where some of the kids had perfect SAT scores, and maybe had gotten into an Ivy League school, but they came to Lehigh because they were a legacy or because they got a full academic credit or whatever. And it was very early on where I was sitting with a sophomore at the time, and it was within my first month of working there, and the guy's stat line was unbelievable. Like I reference this in my book, which I guess we'll talk about, but like well, 1,500 plus SATs and 35 ACT. Like what could be wrong? I also was aware of the socioeconomic demographic of a Lehigh student. It's not a cheap school to go to. He's failing. This guy was failing, and you read the stat line and it's a no brainer. And full blown panic attacks, though, significant anxiety, almost paralyzing, where like he was avoiding, wouldn't go to class, wouldn't put up his hand, wouldn't socialize. And I thought, wow, is this unique? And sure enough, it was not. So the landscape of mental health on college campuses, I learned very quickly. And I started that job in August. So I was right at the start of a semester, and my calendar got filled very, very quickly. So the eye-opening experience of, wow, this is pretty pervasive, and it's touching on all areas of psychopathology. It wasn't just sort of like, I'm worried about a test. anxiety, depression, eating disorders, significant substance abuse. And in addition to sort of bigger existential crises of what do I want to do? What do I want to be? My parents wanted me to major in this, but I want to do this. And it really encompassed the full gamut. So I was seeing everything. We all were.
What do you think the primary differences were, if any, between the student athletes and the non-student athletes? Because I know that you talk a lot about that in your blog.
Mm.
You talk a lot about it in your podcast, Mental Health University, um, which will be in the show notes. Um, yeah, I mean, you have a lot of experience with student athletes. And I wonder like what the primary differences are between student athletes and non-student athletes.
It's really interesting. I found that on the one hand, I believe that even today, that they benefit, the student athletes benefit
Mm.
in that. And this is something I get into pretty heavy, both in podcast and in my book, and just in my general conceptualization and philosophy with working with students and parents, is that, students go through 12 years of school prior to getting to college that is quite structured. It is filled with accountability partners. It is filled with predictability of schedule and time management and all kinds of things. Now, athletes and even performers of other types, it could be theater, it could be music, they have this added layer of accountability partners and structure, and their time is managed for them. And then for college students who don't play a sport, or who don't participate in those kinds of performing related activities in college, all of those stability factors leave. They're gone. They're there, but they're not delivered to the students. The students have to go find them, but they've never been habituated to go find them. They've always been delivered as part of the package. The athletes, though, they roll into campus if they're playing a winter sport at a D1 school. They're already meeting with coaches, trainers, nutritionists, and if you're playing a sport like, say, football, you have multiple coaches. So the accountability piece, mandatory study halls, advisors within the academic or within the athletic buildings, all of that is still there for them. The other students don't get that. So in that case, for the student athletes, I see that as very advantageous in terms of the transition. Now, psychologically, though, they're delivered a different set of challenges. While a high performing academic student might arrive on a college campus and recognize that they're not the only valedictorian in the world or salutatorian in the world, or there are actually other smart kids out there on the planet. Now they're all on one campus. That can be a difficult sort of existential moment for them. For the athlete, though, it's that plus, wow, I was the best athlete in the state in my sport. So the added layer for them is the anxiety about performance. If I get injured, recovery, losing my starting spot, losing my position on the team, losing my scholarship, asking for help when I'm injured, asking for help if I'm experiencing depression. So they're challenged there. And then when they choose, either by their own choice or because they've been injured, that they can't play anymore or that they're not going to play anymore, then it becomes this identity crisis. Who am I now? I've been a football player or a track star or a basketball player since I was 5 years old. That's who I am. Now, what do I do? So I think that that does add a layer of challenge and uniqueness to the athlete.
The the non-student athlete, it seems, if if they try to get into a business school and they don't get a direct admit, it can impact their identity, but there are other majors, there are other programs within the school. There are options. But if a football player gets hurt, you don't just go and start playing basketball or baseball or join the swim team. It's, I mean, literally and figuratively, game over.
It is, and that is that has become a very common area of mental health counseling that I do with athletes. So it's gone beyond the sport performance type work of being a sports psychologist, which I do identify myself as to a large degree, sport and performance. Now it's often working with athletes who have had injuries during the recovery process, trusting their knee after rehabbing or their ACL or whatever it might be. And working toward that has become a significant part of that work. It's
How do you think the NIL, the name, image, and likeness, how do you think that has changed student athletes? They're still college students, but now for maybe you could explain what NIL is, first of all, and then how it has changed either your work or what you see with some of these student athletes.
Yeah, so NIL, name, image, and likeness, is this development to benefit the student athlete so that uh, the university athletic department isn't the sole earner of this amazing athlete, right? So they're not earning all the money from anything, jerseys and pictures and whatever else that the athlete's participation in the school generates in terms of income for the school. So it has um, created just a tidal wave, really, of opportunities for these students who are able to negotiate um, financial benefit for attending and playing at a particular university. So they can use it as a not only a bargaining chip, but they're so social media savvy that now they're able to create such a bigger brand of themselves, and which has obviously led to young people who are 16, 17 years old eyeballing millions of dollars before they set foot on a campus. So it's an extraordinary opportunity, obviously. However, it also comes with some pressures as well. One, to perform in front of, if you're a football player at, say, Michigan, and there's 108,000 people in the big house on a weekend, or Alabama or one of the other big schools, like a tremendous amount of pressure. And I also get curious about the rest of the team who does not benefit from that kind of income, and who are there to play it for the pure sport of it. So how does that impact team dynamics? Does it? And what's going to be the fallout from that in years to come? I'm very curious to see how that works and how
That
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 happens.
that's I have not thought of that. Obviously, I'm in the shadow of Indiana University here, and so
Yeah.
we have some stuff going on right now, some some good stuff. Um,
Yes.
the most winning team in their, I think, football history, maybe.
It's incredible.
It's been very, it's been really cool to see all the changes around campus and the buzz nationally around it. But I want to go back to something you said, the intra team dynamics, and I'm thinking about what happens when I'm a rock star. I'm not, but if I was, and I'm a D1
You
athlete
are.
at IU, thanks, Joel. Um, and there's a play unfolding. My risk assessment is going to be very different, isn't it? Like I'm going to play differently. I need to show up and I need to be a baller, but I can't get hurt because there's so much riding on it. And I've heard everyone talk about shelf life. And so I need to play very differently. And then we add into it their developmental stage. These are 19, 20, 21 year olds. What I mean, like what do you hear in terms of like risk analysis and all of these like moving pieces? How do you even begin to kind of untangle all of these like complex pieces with student athletes? And maybe they're not all D1 football players at big institutions like IU, but it could be a D3 volleyball player, who's leading her team, or an amazing swimmer, D2 swimmer who is on their way to the Olympics.
So it's fascinating to listen to when the students are describing their experience of it. It's also fascinating to listen to the varying perspectives of adults who come from different generations of either playing a sport and or parenting, who see that very differently. And so for let's take the student perspective and sort of what they sit with. They are, and it's so hard for me to imagine personally, because while I was an athlete, I certainly wasn't that kind of an athlete. Where a young person who's 17, 18 years old is thinking about this $8 million NIL deal that they get and figuring out what to do with their money. And they're making more money than the president of the university is
Oh
making.
yeah, yeah.
And they're also making more money than most of the coaches are making.
Mm-hmm.
And then thinking through things like, and we're going to see it this time of the year, Rob, with the college football playoff coming up,
Right.
because some of these kids, especially in certain positions, like say running back, if you're the top running back in the country and you know you're aware, because I'm sure people are telling you that the shelf life of an NFL running back is about 4 or 5 years. So do you play in these games and risk getting injured because you're going to be a first round draft pick and come into 10 million or whatever, and do you play and risk that or not? When those decisions were never, they didn't exist. You just play, like we're out to win a national championship here. So the pressure to make those decisions, it's a lot. And let me be clear, the kids that I've had conversations with about these decisions, it wasn't easy. It's not like they're saying, like, well, the hell with it, like I'm not going to play because I'm going to be a first round draft pick. It's brutal because of their development, because at some point they didn't have an NFL deal or an NIL deal, and they were playing for the purity and the love of the sport. And that doesn't just go away. So their teammates relying on them and things like that creates a whole lot of pressure in sifting through those decisions. Big.
They're in a bubble too. The athletic
Yes.
department, I know the folks, the students that I've worked with, I mean, they describe, I mean, every student I've worked with at each of the universities that's been an athlete, it's like a bubble, which can be really, really good in many ways. Um, but it's also very insulative. The socially, it's, I mean, like they don't make friends outside of the athletic department. Um, but also strangely, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too. Um, when people make bad choices, it's they're like the wagons circle around and protect many of the athletes.
They do, yes. So, and I agree with that assessment for sure. There there is a lot of protection there. There's a lot of support. There's, and especially at the bigger universities, right? So where I see a lot of risk is at the smaller ones who don't, who aren't able to absorb and provide that cushion for those athletes. And the risk there is, and I've seen this happen far too often, where the athlete, for whatever it is, for whatever reason it is, makes a bad choice or is not able to play, and then they find themselves down a road and embraced by another social group or opportunity that is just so self-sabotaging that their whole college experience implodes.
Right.
And now we've created multiple problems, multiple stressors, and just a world that they've never known or had to cope with before. And specifically substance abuse
Mm,
and gambling.
yes. Can you talk a little bit more about gambling and I assume that we have seen similar things happen over the last few years. Can you talk about the maybe your best guess percentage wise, like who's gambling, how much gambling is going on, and we're when we're talking about gambling, we're talking about sports betting, right?
We're talking about sports betting, and we're talking about, game gambling,
Gotcha. Okay.
Texas Hold'em, the traditional sort of gambling. So I can, I mean, hopefully there's a lot of takeaways from this conversation. But if there's one of them, this is a big one. This is more pervasive than I think people realize. I think it's more pervasive than what parents realize. And I'm judging that basically, basing it on my observation of when I go out and do talks to, high school parents or groups or whatever, their reactions when I even provide a couple of anecdotes with kids that are in the hole 30 grand,
Mm-hmm.
60 grand, and their parents don't know until they know. And it's more pervasive than I think that people are aware of. I think that it's minimized in terms of like, well, I only spend like $20 here, $20 there. But the thing of it is that, when you start to hear the stories, and I wonder if, you probably heard them too, of like, some of these kids are up until 2, 3 in the morning, like chasing bets and following spreads. And so now their sleep's impacted. And now they wake up the next morning and now they're worried about the money that they've lost and how they're going to get it back and who they're going to tell. But they have 3 hours of class and an exam that day. So it just kind of dovetails. And it's a lot of the online stuff, DraftKings, FanDuel, those kinds of things. And then if a school is then simultaneously in close proximity to a casino, now we have multiple layers of challenge.
How how have you seen all of these issues change from the time when you started? Let's go back to Lehigh because that's where your experience with college students, it sounds like, started. Um, what's changed over time in terms of like diagnoses, symptoms, stressors? Maybe you could talk a little bit about like the starting point and then kind of where things are now and yeah, what's changed
Yeah,
over time.
So again, going back, like I started at Lehigh in 2002. So we think about that year and the year, a couple of years before that, and then the years following that. It was quite a fascinating time to be working on a campus then. And also, I still, even though I haven't worked on a college campus since 2014, I still see 20 to 30 college kids per week, attending different schools, right? And consulting with parents and things like that. So, diagnostically, I don't think that much has changed in the general categories of diagnoses. Lots of anxiety, lots of depression, so you're sort of 47 to 53%, ranges. Still, some eating disorders, substance abuse, college adjustment related disorders. I think that all that's the same in general. Now, what has supplied those diagnoses with more rocket fuel? Social media. So if everybody hasn't read it, read the book The Anxious Generation, please, because he does a really great job at capturing and delineating those factors in a timeline of the intro to phones, social media in particular, and the mental health crisis among Generation Z. So while in 2002, I was still seeing kids with anxiety and depression, they were just getting on Facebook. So if we think of, I think of these diagnoses as sort of like, and I challenge my clients to think about them as like, okay, let's think about what fuels this. So the discussion around the fuel has evolved. If you're going on to Snapchat and or Instagram, and you recognize that you feel like crap when you're on those sites, if you're not laughing, learning, or selling, don't go on them, because that's fueling the anxiety, it's fueling the depression, it's fueling the poor self-concept and the self-confidence. And then it's this other layer, obviously, of constant social comparison. Socially, body image. So we're seeing a lot more body dysmorphia type stuff. That is connected to anxiety and anxiety disorders, OCD. So we're seeing a lot of these sort of new layers of it,
Is that
more
split?
so.
Is that split evenly between young men and young women, or like how are you seeing that change, if at all?
So I think that, and actually, Jonathan Haidt references this in the book, the gender differences, that while it affects both, girls are affected, you know, seemingly more significantly, right? Just with the social comparison, it shows up for boys differently. However, it still shows up, and I got to tell you, there are a number of guys that I talk to who talk about body dysmorphia more than ever. And it's the same thing though. They're looking at this sort of idealization of what someone who's ripped looks like, and I need to look like that. And this is the key part. They create these rules. I need to look like that in order to be happy. I need to look like that in order to have fun socially. I can't go out until I look like this. And when you start to hear that, these are the fuels that I was referring to. And I think, Rob, that's certainly become more of a challenge, in addition to something that is so pervasive that has shifted over the years, is that while all of that's happening and becoming more intense, there's an inverse relationship between the intensity growing and their ability to regulate stress whatsoever decreasing. They have no confidence in their ability to regulate emotions and stress, and especially existential questions.
Well, why is that? So I mean, are all these kids like hit in the head and they have traumatic brain injury and they don't have distress tolerance? Or I mean, is there something in the water? Okay, there's probably something in the water, but like I what changed in terms of distress tolerance, if that's a fair term to kind of
I
smack
use it
on
all the
this?
time. I use it all the time. I think what has changed is certainly the um, the introduction of social media, and that has certainly been a fuel source for it. Um, and the way that the kids are socialized early on, right? So if they're getting phones at 9 or 10 years old, like we're kind of off to the races on this because they can they I think one of the challenges is that they're not subjected to the range of independent tasks that someone like me, and I'm not saying that we're better or worse or anything, it's just a generational difference, which is a crucial thing to be aware of. I'm a Gen X person. I'm a Gen X parent. I had a I walked to school by myself in first grade. I played outside until 7, 8 o'clock at night, unsupervised with my friends. And
Nowadays, your parents would have been arrested.
that's
It's,
exactly right.
I
Like,
mean, I'm like not joking. I mean, there are examples like all over the place where parents like get in trouble, and so
yeah,
it's almost like even if parents want to send their kids out and gain some independence,
yes. So I think that that's a large part of it because it was just how we grew up. Like, we were forced to do it. We were also, which then forced us to make decisions on our own and just deal with the consequences. Now, I didn't have a phone in my hand where I could, ask Siri the answer. But the thing is that even with that answer, it doesn't necessarily help me regulate emotions. It just gives me an answer, but that doesn't take right away. And I think that there's this sort of missing link between, well, wait a minute, here's the answer, but I have the answer, but it's not working. It's because regulation doesn't work that way. And if there's any expectation that, oh, I'll just do this, well, I think that we find out that that is actually not the case, that their ability to kind of confidently tolerate these moments is very poor, no matter how smart they are. And I'm
right.
making an overgeneralization. I know this because I do think there's a percentage of kids out there that are. But if I could point to one skill that has become more challenging and sort of on the radar for the college students that I work with, and even when they graduate and become adults, well, not adults, but like professionals, is the ability to regulate, emotionally regulate.
That I think we may have talked about this before, but that makes me think of um, Nassim Taleb's book, Anti-Fragile, where he talked about macroeconomic systems and the banking system and how we have a fragile system and we think we want it to be resilient, but really we want an anti-fragile economic system that gets stronger through adversity. And after reading that tome, I mean, it's like 10,000 pages or something insane. Um, it it really struck me how it parallels, I think, what we want for our clients, which is anti-fragility, and it was robbed from them when they were younger. Probably with the best intentions, I would think. I don't I
I
don't
think so.
I don't think institutions or parents or society is like kind of nefariously insulating our kids from
No,
this type of growth.
no, I think that that's something that I reassure parents. And I. how it's changed, right? Well, I do more parent consulting now with young adults than I ever have ever in my career in the past 10 years, right? And it's even led to me developing coaching programs that include parents, which I never would have, and have their own sort of separate track. Anyway, you know, they a lot of parents blame themselves, and I reassure them that no, 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 there's not, you can't just blame, well, you're a helicopter parent, because it's not that simple. It's, yes, that's part of it, but we do that for a reason. I do it because of, like, I don't know, my parents would leave for a week and they're like, go ahead. Or they're like, you're 12? Yeah, go home and make lunch and turn the stove on while you're at it, and then turn it off, clean up, and then go back to school in sixth grade. Right. So, but is it that? Is it the trophy culture? Is it the educational system? Is it, that, you know, coaches get all like, anxious about cutting a kid and what the implications of that are? It's kind of like, what? So to me, it's a collection of factors that have led to this real challenge for the kids and the college kids.
Right. All right, I'm gonna turn the heat up a little bit. You talk a good game about all these challenges and all these like students that need all this help. I want to
Yeah.
hear what you do about it. I want to hear. So you referenced some of the programs that you have, some of the
Mhm.
tools. I want to hear how you work with people. I want to hear like what are some of the interventions you use. Um, yeah, so these people are coming into your office every day. What do you do?
Right. So, one, first and foremost, and I'm not saying this is the way to do it, but this is how my style has and approach has evolved over years and will likely continue to evolve. Uh, so everybody's unique, first and foremost. I don't do the manualized. Okay, here's how we're going to do this CBT chapter, this CBT chapter. No, it's very blended. So yes, I have a PhD in clinical psychology and I have the ability to assess and diagnose. Absolutely. And I use that certainly as a framework. However, I blend solution focused approaches, CBT approaches, sports psychology and performance approaches, coaching approaches. I find personally that most of the college students, and actually even the adults that I work with, prefer, prefer a coaching approach as opposed to a traditional psychotherapy approach. Hands down, that's just my work. So there's a little bit of education built into those early moments of like, hey, this is how I work with people. It's very collaborative. If I'm not doing something right or you need something more or less, let me know and I will do my best to be agile and adjust. I don't use a lot of psychological jargon. Um, and I work, and this is probably one of the most primary um, kind of fundamental aspects of my work is that I work from a strengths based platform. So, whatever a person is delivering to me in terms of complaints or challenges, I want to know what they're good at. I want to know what they gravitate toward in terms of interests. And the reason for that is because I think a lot of times, especially with young people, they've done really hard things. They just don't value them. And to me, raising their awareness to moments, and we were talking about athletes before, which is a really, really great example, is sometimes it's like, well, think of your hardest practice that you've ever been through. You go to the gym and you lift heavy weights and you push yourself through challenging moments every single day. How do we take that and apply it to trusting yourself to tolerate this level of discomfort because you're deadlifting 600 pounds. It's an exaggeration, but you get the idea. How do we draw that line between trusting your ability to tap into that in the area of an internship interview, or dealing with conflict with a roommate, or depression or anxiety and tolerating worry? And I often draw this image for them of, and normalize the fact that like anxiety and depression ain't going anywhere. It's part of life. Like everyone has something. Now, what we want to try to do in terms of increasing that regulation confidence is to imagine yourself in a boxing ring, and that opponent appears in front of you randomly in the form of anxiety, in the form of depression, in the form of self-doubt. And you're there, and we want to develop the confidence to stand toe to toe with it. No matter the intensity, no matter the duration, that you trust yourself to get through it and to push through it because you've done it a million times. You just don't credit yourself for it. So it's really like a lot of teaching as well. And in addition, if people are stressed out and they have a lot to say, or they want to talk through a relationship, there's that opportunity to do the digger deeping, the digger digging, deeper digging. Yes, finally, into like, hey, this was kind of showing up, earlier in my life, and I'm kind of seeing a similar pattern now. Like, we can do that too.
Tell me about Bounce Back,
Yeah.
because that's a more formal program that you have, and I wonder like how you use that and who uses it, and yeah, like what are the details around that? Because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. So college bounce back, and specifically, like I kind of tagged another word on it, accelerator, is uh, quite honestly a little selfishly built because I was a horrible college student. And it took me a lot of time to figure out what I was doing wrong and why I couldn't be academically successful. So I kind of reached back and thought about those experiences, and um, I make my transcript very visible to the clients that I work with to prove it to them.
Are you
um,
talking? You're talking about your college transcript?
yes, yes. Usually I have it hanging up, but for the sake of this interview, I didn't want to hang it over my head. Um, it was really hard. It was really a tough time, and I went through, anxiety and definitely some self doubt. Like, hey, can I do this? So while I developed it years ago, and basically it's a coaching program, it's a high touch coaching program for students who have torpedoed a semester and their parents. Now they're not together, they're separate tracks. So it's a group coaching program where I create a community of students who are in a similar boat. It's not a group therapy, though. I want to be very clear about that. There's definitely components of empowering and teaching students how to take action and take accountability for their mental health in a variety of different ways. And infused in it is helping students discover what their personal underminers to college success are. And they could be several. It could be a lifestyle choice or whatever.
So things that they're doing, or variables that are negatively impacting them
Yes,
academically.
things they're doing or not doing.
Right.
Right. And so it's raising their awareness to that. It's raising their awareness to, well, this worked in high school for you, and you're trying to make it work in college, but it's not working. So we have to assess and adjust. So basically, I teach a student, and I use a sports analogy here, is like we're looking at a football season for 4 months, 16 weeks, roughly, in a college semester. And how we go and assess and make adjustments as any team would or athlete would during the course of the season, and how we prime ourselves for peak performance. So there's a lesson in there, how to think like an athlete. And we work through an entire semester together, and we're able to target things like ahead of the game too, like prepping for midterms, normalizing the anxiety, normalizing performance anxiety and why that's actually good, what to do and how to recover quickly if you don't do well on an exam, how to define exams so that, if there's a difference between I failed an exam and I'm a failure, um, how to respond favorably and proactively with professors rather than waiting until the end of the semester when they're rolling their eyes and saying, "Where were you?" So, and then it's really built upon, Rob, I'm so committed to, and it's sort of like book number 2 that's coming. It's the ungraded skills. It's the emotional intelligence skills. It's, the self-awareness and empathy and regulation. And there's consistency. And then I developed this skill card that tracks every week, this bucket system of like, okay, I've exercised, I've done this, I've done that, study groups. This week I haven't. So here's the adjustment that I need to make. And they can track their experiences. And we normalize everything from, mental health to the pace of their development and experience in colleges versus the 30,000 other students that are on the campus, because that can be very unnerving. There's a lot of teaching, there's a lot of coaching, there's a lot of community. And then for the parents, it's great because I get to help them answer all those big what if questions that lead them to sleepless nights.
Is this something that folks need to sign up for like a discrete semester, or can people jump into this at any time of the year?
So there's two options, there's three options. One, yes, they can do it for a discrete semester. So for example, now people are starting to, inquire and sign up for the spring semester because Thanksgiving is coming up. So and fall break is over and parents' weekend's over. So parents have been able to eyeball their kid. Now they're going to be able to eyeball their kid on Thanksgiving weekend. And they're going to see it. And then the Monday after Thanksgiving is December 1st. And the Monday after Thanksgiving, I labeled years ago Deer and Headlights Monday. Because you arrive back on a college campus as a student, like, oh my God, there's only 2 weeks left. And I haven't been to class in 2 weeks, and my parents don't know. So that so the program can run that way. There's a self-guided program too that parents can just watch 26 videos alongside a workbook for the student and the parents. And then we were talking about the independent thing before. So one of the newer programs that I developed is called the Independence Blueprint. That's a 12-month immersive program that includes all of that. Plus, I pull in a C-suite executive coach and HR person who talks to us who joins us 3 or 4 times a year about like, hey, this is what you guys really need to know and develop because I'm the one that's going to be hiring you.
That sounds like for juniors, or like
Juniors,
spring
seniors.
semester, junior, fall semester, senior. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's definitely more immersive. It's,
Hmm.
even over the summer. And there's individual um, coaching sessions with me as well in that one. The other one is purely a group experience. And it's really to kind of, we got to do a 180 here and we need to do it quick because as we know, and parents know, like it's ridiculously expensive. It's a huge investment. And I think that part of the Bounce Back Accelerator program too, it's woven through that college is an investment in personal development. We want to work through the stuff we're not good at, discover some new, really inspiring things, and squeeze every drop that we can out of this investment.
One of the things that I I I talk about with parents I frame college as a series of semesters, and it's not 4 years. And we need to look at it as a semester by semester experience. But I like the term you used, an investment in um, kind of like what I think of as building a human being. But if you and I were investing $25,000 a year in something, we would want to see what the performance looks like. You know, if we were investing in real estate or an index fund or something, we'd want to do some research on it and we'd want to keep tabs on it. And it seems like universities have either trained parents or there's some disconnect because parents often, and I'd love to hear your experience on this. A lot of the parents I work with, it's almost like, well, they got the letter that they were admitted. My kiddo said yes, and then I dropped them off. And what else am I supposed to do? Like, I thought the university was going to take care of all the other stuff, and then the university is saying, "Well, we're not going to do anything. They have to come to us. The kid has to come and ask for help." And that's assuming that the universities are well staffed, which is another challenge right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, what are you hearing in terms of like parents and oversight and these benchmarks? Because it sounds like your program is really helping create accountability and
Yes,
really like kind of taking this investment and saying, hey, we need to actually do some research and make sure that we're on track for what we anticipated.
that's right. So, couple of things. First and foremost, and I referenced my first client at Lehigh in 2002. I neglected to mention that when that student left the office, I had a yellow sticky pad, and on one of the sticky notes, which I still have, I wrote, "College admission does not guarantee readiness." And I still have it. And the book that I wrote was really kind of sort of based on that statement because yes, students get into school, but they're funneled. It's the school, the educational system in a large part is funneling toward admission. But admission doesn't guarantee readiness. Just because you get in does not mean you're going to get through.
Right.
You, I mean, if we think about it, I don't want to bring up the SATs because that's another tragedy in my life. 4 times that I took it. Um, there wasn't one question on the SATs though about like how grades get impacted by a roommate conflict or someone who's suicidal or so it's kind of like, well, wait a second, you're telling me that's not going to impact performance? Like, come on. So one of the problems is there's this gap between like the college's expectation that, well, a kid should be ready, but the grades 1 through 12, they might talk or use words like social emotional learning, but there's a difference between social emotional learning and social emotional experiential learning. Where's that? We need that because when they arrive on campus, it's unfortunate because the kids are arriving empty handed in terms of the skill set that will get them through. And then for a lot of them, it becomes a big wake up call. Now, is that the reason why close to 30% of first year students don't return to the same school for year 2? Or is that the reason why, 50% of kids have anxiety or that 1,100 kids a year commit suicide on college campuses? Like, maybe some. But to your point too, there might be this expectation of parents that, well, they'll be able to do counseling when they're on campuses. Here's the deal, like at Lehigh, 2002 to 2007, so 20 years ago, I was there, and even they back then were moving to short-term therapy models, group therapy models, because we couldn't handle the volume. Last time I looked, on average, there's one licensed therapist per like 1,500 students on a college campus. There's no way they can handle the volume. So if the expectation is, well, they'll just take care of it there, the schools can't do that.
In the Big Ten, which IU is a part of, there's so CAPS, Counseling and
Mhm.
Psychological Services on these university campuses. They have these recommended um, um, ratios, and it is mind blowing to go onto the accrediting body's website and actually pull the data. I don't think people realize how bad it is. Um, there's one university that I pulled up because I have a client there. The ratio was 2,900 students for each licensed clinician. I know that at IU, at their caps, there's often a wait list for emergencies.
Yes.
Um, don't even think about going to the brand new hospital that we have because it's a 4 hour wait for emergencies. Um, if you do get into caps, they tell you you will not see the same therapist more than once, and we have to schedule week in and week out, and you get 6 slots, and that's it. So
Yep.
so I don't know when I'm going to be able to come back based on my class schedule and the caps availability, and I'm not going to be able to see the same person again. So I have to retell my story. I have to update them. What student is going to say like this sounds like a great idea? Sign me up. And
Yeah.
and and so your program, it
Yes.
really fills in a massive gap. So what's your limit then? I mean, you can't work with hundreds of thousands of students.
No, I mean, that would be an extraordinary sort of good problem to have,
Right.
but also a concerning, right? Like, wow, there's that many. Yes, it does, right? And it does sort of help to fill that. Now, again, like it's not therapy. Like it's not. I can't submit claims
Right.
or anything.
Right.
So it's mental health and performance coaching because in my mind as well, like, and this is why it kind of aligns with my approach and philosophy in general of bridging clinical and sport and performance and coaching all together because uh, if we're investing, if I'm out of state and my kid's going to the University of Michigan, probably 85,000 a year. Well, if I'm investing that, and I'm aware that my kid has an anxiety issue, well, they still have to perform while managing the anxiety. So the bounce back accelerator is exactly for that. It's accountability, it's structure, and it's accessible. So one of the features of it is yes, there's a weekly group coaching meeting that students can drop into. It's recorded. So if they're not there, they can still watch it.
That's
And
great.
I have a community, a 24/7 community where students can drop in and say like, "Hey Joel, got a question." And then, 1 hour a day, I pop in there and answer the question. So they always have a place to sort of drop stuff.
And
Now,
the other group members can see the
yes,
questions
they
and your
can.
response.
Yes, they
Oh, that's
can. And
great. Yeah.
the importance of that is one, oh, geez, I'm not alone.
Right.
I think that too. Now, that's a hard piece for a kid to wrap their head around because most of the time they think they're the only ones going through it, and they're not. Um, so to provide that, oh, wow, there's other people here too, is a very, very powerful thing. And again, it's an opportunity for me to help them become the drivers of their mental health and to take ownership of it. Because much like when we were off air talking about like longevity and health, this is the same thing. You know, the longevity health people are talking about how to empower the patients to take more ownership of their health. The same thing goes with mental health. We got to exercise. We got to know about nutrition. We got to know about hydration. We got to know about supplementation. We got to know about sleep and substance use. And all of that impacts mental health and performance. So the bounce back program, it highlights that for 16 straight weeks. And it provides them with accessibility. I'm sure you're seeing it where the kid's like, well, great. Like now I have to go into the private sector off campus to see a therapist because the therapist at home isn't a part of Psych Pact, but they're not available either. So now I got to do a telehealth. And I don't know what I'm getting there with
Right.
one of the bigger telehealth companies. Who knows what I'm getting? It's a lot. It's a lot to unpack, you know.
I'm gonna put a link to Bounce Back Accelerator and your other stuff in the show notes as well. What do you wish universities did differently? And it's great that we're employed, but
Yeah.
let's put aside like whether it would benefit us in some way. I mean, if we could rebuild university systems, um, and I've asked a few different guests this, some researchers, other authors, psychologists, psychiatrists, um, and the answers sometimes are very surprising to me. Um, what do you wish universities did differently? How would you rebuild a system if you could?
I think, and it's a great question, and it's really a big question because in large part we're talking about a very antiquated system that, depending on the percentage of generations that are employed in that system, are tough to move in terms of
It's a dinosaur.
progression.
It's a
Yeah,
dinosaur.
I mean, thank you for cutting through that. One thing I loved about Lehigh was that both in counseling services, like it was so progressive, even back in 2002. Like my boss, who I revere, was like, get out there. So I'm like, oh. And I sort of had this free reign to develop programs. Like I did a cooking program, mood and food in the fraternities and sororities, where I teach them how to, I was going to go to culinary school. That was going to be my backup at one point. So I learned how to cook in restaurants when I was a kid, but I teach them how to make a food, something healthy. And we talk about a mental health topic during the program. Like,
I love that.
so to become more innovative, right? To we can get to sort of the academic changes that would probably be helpful, but I think in general that I think people are challenged to look within themselves and work to create more approachability between this generation of students and develop more mentorship. um you know, yeah, you got to be on campus 18 hours a week. I hear this a lot from students. And then my professor's only there available for like an hour of office hours. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, no, we need to create more of a support and development community around the students. Now, the Division of Student Affairs, which at some schools have evolved into the Division of Student Development, uh, recognize the importance of like, oh, well, that's why they're here. Um, I think do a pretty good job of it, but a lot of them are really short staffed too. So I think that creating this context of approachability with the students becomes crucial. I think that the uh, creation of innovative programming and creating a culture of wellness, not band-aiding a pre-existing organization with like a program, but really building it foundationally. becomes absolutely imperative, focusing more on not just lecturing about like emotional intelligence skills, but how do we weave this in to our environment? One of the really cool things about, I keep going back to Lehigh, I'm going to go back and work there, was that I would go to the gym at noon in the campus gym where students would be. And one of the coolest things ever was that my boss said, like, hey, block your calendar out 12 to 1:30 every day. That's your time. He went running 5 to 7 miles a day. So I would go to the gym, I'd play basketball with other faculty members, and then the head of student affairs would be in there working out at noon. So top down approach. Everybody's got to be in on it. Everybody. Just like any other organization, and I think if they evolve to that, it would be so helpful to the students because they need to observe that other people are doing it too.
It seems like so many universities and colleges are so much more compartmentalized now than they used to be, and the schools that are doing a a very good job from a mental health or let's say a wellness perspective, there's integration between faculty, student life, and parents. Um, I, it drives me bananas. All of how a lot of universities hide behind FERPA and HIPAA. Oh, you we can accept your money, but we cannot acknowledge that your son or daughter goes to school here. Um, even when their son or daughter is actively suicidal.
Right,
What?
right. It's terrifying. And you know, I've sat in on those calls, to parents. I've had to make those calls when I worked on colleges, campuses to parents. Hey, you have to pick your kid up. Like, why? Well,
Right, right.
they're suicidal or they had this drug problem or whatever. And the parents are like, what are you talking about?
We didn't know.
Right. And I agree with you. I definitely think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. Um, you know, I remember the shock of sitting with a financial consultant 2 months before my daughter was born. And we have one kid, but 2 months before she was born, he's like, all right, so when's your kid due? It's like, oh, October. Like, okay, so you're gonna need 350,000 for college. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, Joel. He's like, no, you went to college in 1988. Like it that's a huge investment. Oh my God, it's huge. So more than once, um, faculty, staff members at various colleges and universities that have been connected to have suggested slash urged me like, hey, if you're going to practice, please do something for the parents.
Yeah.
They're a
Yeah.
hurt
It
bunch.
just seems like it just seems so obvious from, I think, from our perspective. I think like post acceptance letter and everyone's brains turn off or something. And it's like,
Yes.
no, no, no. You just got an invitation to the starting line.
Yes.
And this is a team-based approach. This is not like, okay,
Right.
see you in 4 years.
So to your point, and it's that admissions letter, which is are coming this time of year, especially for kids who've done early admission or early decision, right? If they're in, if they're going to Indiana and they know it November 6th, are they spending November through August prepping for the rigors of the Kelley School of Business? No. They're going to develop really bad habits and bring them to Indiana, like every kid would do. Once I'm in, what, senioritis, that term was developed when? Like,
Yeah.
it so what happens is they show up on campus with either underdeveloped emotional intelligence skills or just none, and really bad habits. Okay, now we have not in Jersey 180 days of the school year to kind of tweak it and fix it. No, we have a 75-day semester. We don't have 10 months, we have 4. And if you're 3, 4 weeks in and you got to recover, that is a tough spot.
Yep.
And again, that's what, in part, what college bounce back accelerators for.
We're running out of time. I want to make sure to
Yeah.
you've referenced a book coming,
Oh,
2
yeah.
books coming.
Yeah.
Joel, tell me about your books.
So the first one that's forthcoming more immediately, which should be in the next month or 2, maybe the beginning of the new year, but hopefully before then, it's called Fix It Fatigue. How Gen X parents, and I'm not dissing other generations, I just happen to be a Gen Xer, so in part I wrote it for my friends. Um, how Gen X parents can go from fixing everything to raising an adult that can handle anything. It's been I want to say a labor of love, but the word love would probably be inaccurate. Um, it's a collection of 14 chapters, but each chapter is a what if question scenario that has been posed to me by a parent over the past 25 years. And one of the challenges with what if questions that we don't answer them. They often wind up creating a loop of other what if questions. So Gen Xers, of which I'm one, is the fix it for you generation raising the Gen Zers who I needed fixed yesterday people. And we suggest those solutions through our methods. So it's heightening our awareness, Gen X parent awareness of how we think about things, how we did things, and normalizing that and celebrating it. But how we need to make an adjustment from kind of parenting in our way to a more coaching way to help our student develop independence, emotional intelligence skills, etc. So it's filled with anecdotes and personal experiences, and then exercises to do as well, and questions to engage your child with too.
Can you give an example of one of the big what ifs? Because I'm sure that there are a few that are like, oh, this is the one I hear like all the time. Like, what if?
What if my kid, what if my college grad can't get a job after graduation? Now, the fix it parent, the Gen X parent, goes into problem solving mode, peppers their kid with suggestions, and connections and solutions.
I'm going to
And
open up my network. I've got a friend at Goldman. I've got you have a cousin who you haven't met who
exactly. And they then observe their kid to be unresponsive to any of those solutions. Well, go out there and network, go out there and like hustle. And that's like speaking a foreign language. You're lucky if the kid isn't walking around with like headphones as you're talking to them about this. And they're unresponsive. They're not applying to internships. They're not applying to jobs or whatever it might be. And that's a very, very frustrating place for a parent, which leads to, well, what if they don't get a job? What if they'll be living at home? And is this my fault? What did I do wrong? So it trips off this series of worries. It's a worry cycle that leads to parents not prioritizing their own mental and physical health, which then just keeps the cycle. So they're now seeing this as a full-time job. And so what a chapter, and that is a chapter, does is to highlight it, normalize it, and then also challenge parents to approach it differently with different questions. So what do we want? Well, I want a college grad that's an independent thinker and problem solver, but I'm doing all the problem solving and thinking for them. How do I change my dialogue so that I still care, but in a way that helps them become the independent problem solver?
So you're teaching parents how to be more effective.
Yes.
That you're validating their intentions, which are the best, but you're helping them level up from parenting 1.0 to 2.0 or whatever.
While simultaneously prioritizing their own mental and physical health, which
Right.
is ultimately critical.
Right.
I can't exercise until I know my kid's asleep. No, I know that's a hard no, but like, no, you have to do it. You have to model it and be unapologetic about modeling it.
It seems like a lot of what we see in mental health with college students is really parent mental health
Yes,
kind of kind of working its way down the mountain in some way.
I see it constantly. I see it with drinking, especially.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yes, I mean, it's interesting. My daughter just got her driver's permit, right? And I heard these stories that hopefully I don't get in trouble for this, but like, I don't know, we've had my daughter driving for over a year. Yeah, well, I would drive up the block or maybe around the block, whatever. But okay, now other parents are like, no way, no way, not until the permit. But you're allowing your kid to bring alcoholic beverages to parties, or you're allowed you're allowing them and hosting parties where they can drink in your house. That's you you're good with that? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's actually a really good, yeah, that's a
I
good
find that
observation.
strange.
Yeah. Um I'm going to continue to land this plane. I wonder like what resources, because I know that you're a curious guy.
Mm.
We've spent enough time talking. Um what what are you reading? What podcasts are you listening to? Like, who informs you? Like, where do you get your information from? And I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge for parents and students, but yeah, I wonder like like what you're consuming right now. Any suggestions in terms of podcasts, books, people that are
Yeah.
out there?
Yeah, the more recent books that I've read, certainly The Anxious Generation, I would definitely recommend that one. I'm actually sort of in the process of doing some programs through our high school. They highlighted this book to read, and so we're having meetings and programs around that book. So it's more like the Q&A stuff with the parents. Definitely that one. And I found books like Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell really good. Um, I think it's a really interesting perspective in terms of, especially for parents who are raising these very high achievers, and really kind of like what it takes. I think the Comfort Crisis was
Yep.
good. Yeah, that was a big shakeup. It's kind of like, oh yeah, do hard things. It's good to do tough things. And then I do think that like, even Dan Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, is really, really super important to illuminate the significance of this stuff. You get through, if you look at a college diploma, whether it's mine or some 2025 grads, there's not one course on emotional intelligence listed. And yet that's what every employer wants, which is very, very odd that we're not really emphasizing that. So, well, we are, but we're not cultivating it. So I do think that that's a great book to read. A great resource for parents is it's on Facebook too. It's called Grown and Flown. It's a really great parent kind of place where I think a lot of people contribute and they write some really good articles. And then for me, I mean, I'm a health nut, and so I'd love to go down those rabbit holes with people like Rich Roll and Peter Attia and here and there, I'll listen to Huberman Lab, and Rhonda Patrick. So a lot of the health stuff, because I believe in the integration between mental optimal mental health comes from physical health and fitness and nutrition and all that. So those are probably the big ones.
Yeah, those are good. Yeah, I will. As with the other resources, I will definitely make those available in the show notes for sure. I would be. I don't even know what the word remiss means, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you right now about, and this is going to be a complete shift, and we don't need to spend a lot of time on it because I know that we're running out of time. We're in a very strange time period right now in terms of AI and what's happening at the federal and state level, the economy. I mean, there are a lot of weird things going on. We have the first trillionaire um,
Oh yeah,
as of today. Uh,
nice.
um, I don't know about you. I hear a lot of students freaking out about career. Students that thought they were going to go into finance, that they thought they were going to into computer science, informatics. Um, Student athletes,
Hmm.
even if they are really good at whatever sport they do, if they're sober minded, they know that they're probably not going to do that as a career, or they're not going to do it very long. So I wonder if you have any insights for parents, or if there are any students listening around career advice or how not to freak out. Yeah, any thoughts around how AI is eating everything? And yeah, and what you're seeing from a career perspective.
Yeah, so this is definitely become an area in the past 3 years where I'm seeing a lot of college grads very distressed, um, having a difficult time getting jobs. And so I'm hearing a lot of frustration, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and a lot of self doubt. And it's really quite concerning. So a lot of the work is helping them to navigate through the tolerance of that, and regulating themselves through that without, and preserving the idea of working on yourself throughout this whole process. So we don't want to kind of fall into this sort of spiral of bad habits while we are waiting for that interview and interviewing, or going through that process and networking. And we don't want to sabotage ourselves. So that's a big part of this. They are very worried that AI, and areas of AI are taking over their industries or prospective industries. So it leads them to devalue their majors and degrees and all of that stuff. So a lot of anxiety around it because there's a lot of uncertainty around it. And this generation has a very difficult time tolerating uncertainty. And uncertainty is really the huge, I mentioned rocket fuel. That is the rocket fuel for anxiety. And so it's helping them regulate that. And it's challenging them to rethink their skill set, the applicability of their skill set, to generalize their skill set, which actually AI can be quite helpful in doing. So, for example, one of the exercises I do with some students who come in with a degree and a resume is, listen, let's take a minute and run it through ChatGPT with a prompt. And we've created prompts specific to them in aligning with a couple different areas of work. And that utility has proven to be pretty helpful and has led to some real optimism and movement. So that's certainly something that I'm seeing. But overall, with the just general uncertainty of the market, and I don't know, one of the things I'm also hearing is the sheer frustration that, well, wait a minute, I finished college, I should be able to get a job.
The social contract.
Yes. And that's one of the things the colleges will highlight those favorable statistics on their landing pages in the first two folds. But the reality of it is, like, you can pull stats from anywhere, and, you know, grain of salt with all those, maybe more than one grain.
Seems like there's a rigidity with students that um it's not fair that I don't have a job, and the fear and all the other stuff, but also uh, almost this low level in not entitlement as in like a rich kid entitlement type thing, but um this was a linear course. You know, high school to undergrad to career, I put my time in. I went to those 8 a.m.s that I didn't want to go to. I studied, I did all the stuff I really didn't want to do. And I mean, this is part of the contract that I signed up for, is a job at the end. And it seems like we do a pretty bad job of, and especially parents in universities saying like, there are no guarantees.
Right.
This is, we're trying to increase probability. And I don't hear anyone talk like that.
No, and it's sad, and I do talk like that, and I'm often met with eye rolling and probably some comments that I'm not privy to listen to, but oh well. But it is the reality of it, because like you, like, I sit and listen to those kids, those grads, they're not kids anymore. And I think the other sort of part to it too, Rob, is that they also, with the sort of linear expectation, is also this salary that's supposed to accompany it as well.
Yes.
And then they learn that that is actually not the case, or they learn the number of hours that they have to work for that salary, which is they've never done before. They're not habituated to it. The real risk I hear, though, is that, well, until that opportunity presents itself, I'm not going to do anything.
I shouldn't
So
have to.
yeah, so they minimize the grind. They minimize the grit of the part-time jobs and hustling, and just developing another one of the ungraded skills that will be highlighted in the forthcoming book called The Dynamite Transcript: work ethic. Develop it, hone it, trust it. Be the person that no one's going to outwork me.
Right, that grittiness, being able to grind. Yeah. And
It's
I
one
think
of the
that,
things
oh, go ahead.
it's one of the things I think that frustrates Gen Xers who are employers of, those potential employees, the Gen Z kids, is that, you know, if you're from New Jersey, and you are a Gen Xer, in all likelihood, unless you were, and even if you were, if your family was independently wealthy, you worked summer jobs at the shore, and more than one. So, you know, what I tell my daughter, well, when I was 12, when I was in sixth grade, I was working 35 hours a week in the summers. And she looks at me like I'm an alien. But it's what we did, and we never complained either. So it frustrates a lot of Gen X leaders and business owners. And a lot of times they don't want to hire the entitled kids that are coming out of college, which is a shame.
Yeah. All right, man. Um, so much good stuff. How, if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to work with you, if they want to learn more about all your great tools and interventions, how can people contact you?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's easiest to just hop on the website, drjoelingersoll.com. Um, there's a couple of links there to email me. It's usually the best place to, easiest place to reach me. I answer my own emails. And certainly there's links there to call, and, happy to do that.
Great. Joel, I appreciate all of your insights and your time today. And I look forward to the book coming out too. Sounds really great. I'm really excited to read that. So anyway, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Before you head off, I just wanted to say thanks for tuning in today. All of the resources discussed are in the show notes below. And one last thing, if you know anyone that would benefit from this episode, please forward it along to them. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to my podcast, the YouTube channel, and the newsletter. All right, see you all next time.